World building has gotta be tough, especially in gaming. I mean, it's hard enough to imagine creating hours of engaging content in the first place, but then contextualizing that gameplay within a believable world? Talk about a juggling act. And while it's tempting to interpret realism in terms of graphics, I've always found the most immersive worlds are the ones with a deep connection to the gameplay itself, even if that gameplay is about a plumber with a super soaker strapped to his back. Hi there, my name is Daniel, and I think Super Mario Sunshine is pretty creative. Is there anything Mario can't do? Seriously, the dude's a world-class athlete, professional racer, and he still has time to take down Bowser on a regular basis. Mario has done so much over the years, but in 2002, this guy really wanted to give him a water gun. Super Mario 64 had laid the groundwork for 3D gaming by transforming this tightly designed side-scrolling series into a sprawling, non-linear sandbox. But with the vast technological improvements of the GameCube, Nintendo was finally able to fill these basic worlds with life, allowing for new experiences that never would have been possible on the 64. And to fully explore this newfound freedom, everybody's favorite bros were given some fancy new toys to interact with the world around them. This time, Luigi actually came first, launching the console and his own spin-off series with this crazy new Ghostbuster-style gameplay. But in Mario's case, the goal was to get the most mileage out of 64's winning formula. So, in true Nintendo fashion, Super Mario Sunshine became both an evolution of its predecessor and a bit of an experiment. Within minutes of booting up the game, we're introduced to the Flash Liquidizer Ultra Dousing Device, or FLUDD for short. And while those opening moments remind us that this is still the same 3D Mario we know and love, our new AI-powered water blaster transforms just about every aspect of that familiar core gameplay. Because we're no longer just jumping around these environments. We're cleaning up messes, hovering across chasms, and launching ourselves into the stratosphere. But all of that comes at a price, namely water. Good thing the game conveniently takes place in the middle of the ocean, huh? And that's no accident. Koizumi's team wanted a world that would synergize with FLUDD's mechanics. So instead of sticking with the Mushroom Kingdom's tried and true course archetypes, they boldly chose to place the entire game within a single, interconnected setting. If you're even remotely familiar with Sunshine, you know about Isle Delfino. This tropical resort is overflowing with personality, with a legacy that extends far beyond the mainline Mario series. Piantas, Nokis, Shine Sprites? The people and culture of Isle Delfino have become iconic staples that stand apart from the series' more familiar tropes. And the island itself is still perhaps the most immersive Mario setting to date. Mario's worlds have historically been very video gamey in their design. You might be battling your way through an enemy airship, navigating a massive clock, or blasting off into a galaxy made entirely of sweets. Why? Because the developers thought it'd be fun. Mario has always been the poster child for Nintendo's gameplay-first philosophy, which is crystal clear when looking at the sheer wackiness of more recent titles like Wonder. And while Sunshine certainly follows this pattern as well, Isle Delfino goes a step further by providing context for its platforming objectives. Sure, you might be bouncing on enemies, walking across tight ropes, and climbing on metal grates, but you're doing so within the context of this lively central market, a peaceful hillside village, and even a theme park. These 8 locales are video game levels, yes, but they also serve as interconnected landmarks that each contribute to the island's culture as a whole. Delfino might not be Mario's first iconic island, but it carved its own unique legacy by grounding itself in relatable, real-world experiences. Because even Mario needs a vacation. And in the series' first ever pre-rendered cutscenes, we are very quickly introduced to our new setting, a new villain, and a new set of objectives. Hey, the princess isn't actually kidnapped this time. That comes later. Instead, Mario's been framed for vandalizing this peaceful island and scattering its beloved Shine Sprites to the winds. So along with our new friend FLUDD, we're sentenced with cleaning up the island as we search for the true culprit to clear our names. Now, Sunshine is not a narrative masterpiece, and with the lackluster voice acting and frankly troubling plot points, some of these cutscenes are tough to get through. But it's cool to have a more specific, contextualized motivation to complete the game's objectives, rather than just, hey, collect these power stars because that's how you beat the game. The shine sprites are essentially sacred artifacts in Delfino's culture, reflecting the sun's rays to literally provide light to the island. Not sure if the science checks out there, but hey, it is rewarding to see this radius of sunshine expand as you add more shines to the central shine gate. And I guess this narrative-driven gameplay shouldn't be all that surprising, since Koizumi would also be responsible for this just a few years later. But it's genuinely delightful to see this island evolve as you wipe away gunk and save its inhabitants from, let's be real, certain death. Yeah, I'd be dancing too, pal. But this heavier focus on narrative comes at a cost. Back in 64, each stage was basically an open playground. And while these intro screens certainly imply an intended order of objectives, most of them can actually be completed in any order. Sunshine, on the other hand, is not having any of this. Instead of basic, disconnected objectives scattered throughout each stage, Delfino's locales lock us into a linear sequence of 8 narrative-driven episodes, which fully recontextualize the area in question. Now, this lack of player autonomy can make the stages feel restrictive and even superficial, since there are massive areas in each episode that go pretty much unused. Delfino Plaza does at least give us freedom when choosing a level, but because this game packs more shines into fewer stages, their episodic linearity tends to feel more limiting than it would in later games. On the flip side, however, these narrative through-lines in each area allow episodes to more effectively build on each other, which provides space for mechanics to be introduced and evolve organically. Take this Petey Piranha fight, for example. You're supposed to shoot water in his mouth to incapacitate him, which you already learned earlier from fighting these proto-piranhas. And while the fight is over after a few well-placed ground pounds, we learn a few episodes later that this was just the setup for a much more complex rematch with the beast. So while this linear approach does have its drawbacks, Sunshine leans into it to squeeze the most out of its mechanics and further immerse players into its world. But the exception to pretty much all of Sunshine's design choices lies in its secret stages. These floating pocket dimensions honestly feel pretty out of place among Isle Delfino's interconnected areas, but the removal of FLUDD and their general linearity does inject some of that classic Mario gameplay into an otherwise unfamiliar world. Don't be fooled by the catchy music though. These things are freaking tough, and not always in a good way. In fact, the stripped-down nature of these stages tends to put a spotlight on the game's general lack of polish, at least by Nintendo's standards. Mario has never felt more snappy and responsive than he does here, but the ridiculously high sensitivity on nearly all his moves makes it nearly impossible to avoid accidental inputs. Now, the hover nozzle does mitigate some of these issues, and is generally far more useful than the more gimmicky rocket and turbo nozzles. But Mario's moveset isn't even the only problem here. Pretty much any time Sunshine asks you to operate outside of Mario's tried and true mechanics, you can bet that you're in for a bad time. The one satisfying exception is actually Yoshi, who makes his first playable appearance in a 3D Mario game and, as usual, adds some fun new wrinkles to the core gameplay. In World, Yoshi was available in a majority of the stages and functioned as sort of a general upgrade to Mario's abilities. Sunshine's Yoshi, however, is much more puzzle-focused and is usually locked to specific episodes where he's needed. The game uses this whole fruit motif in which you need to bring back the correct fruit in order to hatch Yoshi's egg. The fruit then determines Yoshi's color and in turn the behavior of his juice? Yep, this Yoshi shoots juice out of his mouth, which transforms enemies into platforms that behave differently depending on his color. Alright Nintendo, you win. I'm done trying to figure out where you get these ideas. This sort of wacky stuff is all over Sunshine, so it kind of bums me out that it's not as much fun to complete. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore the sheer ambition and personality of this game, but it just kind of feels like the whole thing runs out of gas near the end. Early on, the narrative actually does a pretty good job of organically propelling you forward. Grab a few shines, get a new cutscene, unlock a new area. But following Bowser Jr.'s infamous reveal at Pinna Park, the way forward becomes a lot less clear. Of course, you'll still unlock the occasional area or power-up as you collect more shines. But how do you actually beat the game? How do you rescue Peach? How do you get there? The answer, which the game does not tell you, is to complete every area's Shadow Mario episode. That's right, you need to complete the first 7 episodes of every stage, thereby triggering this flood in Delfino Plaza and unlocking the pathway to King Koopa himself. Then after a short platforming section, this stupid thing, and a very underwhelming bathtub fight, the game's over. But hold on, if the game only requires about 50 shines to see the credits roll, what about the other 70? Well, about 18 come from Delfino Plaza, 7 from the 8th episode of each stage, another 7 for the 100 coin challenges, and another 14 from the 2 hidden shines in each area. That leaves a whopping 24 that come as a reward for collecting these blue coins. 1 shine for every 10 coins you collect. Yeah, there's a lot of these. And while many are either out in the open or have you complete a timed platforming challenge, some of these guys are an absolute pain to collect. I love having little side collectibles like this, but the moment I have to pull up a walkthrough to find one, only to realize that it's locked to a specific episode, it stops being fun. Plus, later games would just do a better job of using these side collectibles to unlock more meaningful content, rather than just more of the same. Super Mario Sunshine is not perfect by any means, but I love this game. I love how it commits to an ambitious vision and filters just about every one of its ideas through that central theme. I love how it fills in the basic structure of its predecessor and further solidifies a precedent of experimentation for Mario's future adventures. Sunshine might not accomplish everything it strives for, but the big plays it does make have left a lasting impact on the series and the platforming genre as a whole. And if you ask me, Sunshine's greatest legacy will always be its world building. Isle Delfino feels like a real place, which is absolutely nuts considering the locals have frickin' trees growing out of their heads. It carries a real sense of culture that's fed by all the little details within its narrative, gameplay, and stage design. Sunshine might just be a game about cleaning up paint, sure, but its world building reminds me that culture is the result of countless small choices. What kind of culture am I creating? Do my choices communicate love to those around me, or do I carry an atmosphere of insecurity and pride? The legacy I leave behind will be defined by the decisions I make. My words and actions carry weight, and so do yours. So let's be defined by the way we love other people. Let's be known as loyal friends who serve others before ourselves. Think about one way you can honor someone in your life today, and let's take that step together to create a culture of human flourishing in our world. Thanks so much for watching. This episode was a blast to create, and as I've been reflecting on world building and culture making, it's made me all the more grateful for the uplifting community around this channel. The internet and social media can be such toxic places, so it honestly means the world to have uplifting conversations about the video games I enjoy. Thank you for supporting this journey and contributing to the conversation. And please never forget that you are loved, you are valuable, and you are creative. God bless y'all. Have a great day.